All right, let's talk about joint replacements. They're some of the most common surgeries out there, and you know what? The numbers are just climbing. So if you're an anesthesiologist, mastering the care for these patients is absolutely essential. We've put together a really high-yield review to give you all the crucial info you need, whether you're on a list tomorrow or cramming for your final exams. I mean, just to give you an idea of the scale we're talking about, by 2040, it's projected that 1.4 million total hip replacements will be done every single year in the US alone. That's a huge number, and it really drives home why we need to be on top of our game with these cases. And that's where the real challenge comes in, right? Our patients for these surgeries are getting older, and they often come with a whole laundry list of complex medical problems. Look, our job isn't just to keep them safe during the surgery. It's about the whole journey, making sure they have a safe and, really importantly, a speedy recovery. So here's how we're going to break it all down. We'll kick off with the modern approach to care. Then we'll dive into prepping the patient before surgery. After that, we'll get into the big choices we have to make in the operating room, talk about pain strategies that actually work, and finally, we'll cover those key complications you always need to have in the back of your mind. Okay, first things first, we got to talk about the philosophy that really guides everything we do these days: enhanced recovery after surgery, or ERAS. And listen, this isn't just some trendy buzzword. It's a fundamental team-based shift in how we handle the entire perioperative period. You see, ERAS isn't just one thing. It's not a magic bullet. It's a whole package of smart, evidence-based steps, all designed to do one thing: lower the stress of surgery and keep the patient's body functioning as normally as possible. It's all about a coordinated effort to get people back on their feet faster and safer. And you know, that whole process, it starts way before the patient even smells the operating theater. Which brings us to our next big topic: preoperative optimization. This is where we really set the stage for success. So a really thorough workup, absolutely non-negotiable. We're looking at all the major organ systems. Now here's a really important clinical pearl for you. Figuring out their cardiovascular fitness can be super tricky. And why is that? Well, their severe joint pain might be stopping them from walking very far, which could totally mask underlying heart problems that you'd normally spot. You know, out of all the things we can fix beforehand, anemia is a huge one. It's a really big deal. We're talking about 25 to 40% of these patients. That's a massive chunk. And, as the quote says, the impact is obvious. It leads to more blood transfusions, and that just slows down recovery and bumps up the risk for things like infections. So you absolutely need a clear game plan. And luckily, the evidence-based pathway is pretty straightforward. Step 1, find it early with a simple blood test. Step 2, figure out why they're anemic. It's usually iron deficiency. And step 3, treat them based on your timeline. If you've got more than 6 to 8 weeks, oral iron works fine. But if surgery's coming up in less than 6 weeks, you gotta go with IV iron to get those levels up fast enough. All right, so our patient is optimized, they're wheeled into the OR, and now we face one of the biggest questions in arthroplasty anesthesia. Which primary technique are we going to use? And that question is, do we put them all the way to sleep with a general anesthesia, or do we go with a neuraxial technique, like a spinal? People have debated this for years, but now we've got some seriously powerful data to help us out. So take a look at this. This is some really compelling data from a major meta-analysis by the ICAROS group. For hip replacements, when you compare them, going with the spinal was linked to a lower risk of some really serious stuff: all-cause mortality, pneumonia, kidney failure, and blood clots. But there's always a catch, right? The one trade-off is a much higher risk of not being able to pee afterwards. This is crucial stuff to know when you're making a decision and talking to your patient. So whether you end up doing a GA or a spinal, managing that post-op pain is it's everything. It's not just about making the patient comfortable, it's what allows them to recover. Which leads us right into the modern approach, the multimodal pain strategy. The idea here is actually pretty simple, but it's incredibly powerful. Instead of just throwing opioids at the problem, we use a whole cocktail of different drugs and techniques. Each one attacks the pain from a different angle. You get this amazing synergistic effect that gives you better pain control while letting us slash our use of opioids and all their nasty side effects. So what does that cocktail recipe actually look like? Okay, so your base layer is the simple stuff: paracetamol and an NSAID. Then we add a good dose of IV dexamethasone, which is brilliant because it hits both pain and nausea. Then, on top of that, we layer in our regional techniques. And hey, notice where the opioids are on this list. All the way at the bottom. They're for rescue only, not the star of the show. And this slide is a perfect example of how our regional game has evolved to meet these ERAS goals. For a knee replacement, we used to do femoral nerve blocks. Great pain relief, sure, but they knocked out the quad muscle, making it impossible for patients to get up. The modern adductor canal block still gives good pain relief, and, this is the key, it spares the motor function in the quads. That is an absolute game changer for getting patients up and moving on the day of surgery. Okay, so the patient's optimized, we've picked our anesthetic, we've got a solid pain plan. But our job's not done. We also have to be on the lookout for some really specific high-stakes problems. Let's run through a couple of the most important ones. First on that list is something called bone cement implantation syndrome, or BCIS. This can pop up when surgeons are using cement, and it can be anything from a tiny dip in the oxygen sats all the way to a sudden, absolutely catastrophic cardiovascular collapse. You have got to have this on your radar. Okay, so how does this happen? Well, nobody's 100% sure, but the leading theory is what's called the embolus-mediated model. Picture this. The surgeon is pushing that cement and the new joint into the bone. That pressure can basically squirt a shower of tiny particles. We're talking fat, marrow, air, even bits of cement, right into the bloodstream. This shower hits the lungs, causes a massive spike in pressure there, and can lead to the right side of the heart just failing acutely. So the real key here is spotting the high-risk patient before the surgeon even mixes the cement. So who are we worried about? You're thinking about your older, sicker patients, especially anyone with pre-existing pulmonary hypertension or just bad heart function. A pathological fracture is another huge red flag. For these folks, you have to be talking to the surgeon. Constant communication is vital, and you should be ready to put in more invasive monitoring if you need to. Okay, a quick but super important shout out for tranexamic acid, or TXA. I mean, this drug has been a total game changer for managing blood loss in these surgeries. It just stops clots from breaking down, which massively cuts down on bleeding and the need for transfusions. It's an absolute standard of care now. All right, let's wrap this up and pull it all together. If you remember nothing else, remember these key points. 1. IRIS isn't optional. It's the standard of care. It's the whole playbook. 2. Getting patients ready before surgery, especially fixing their anemia, is vital. 3. The evidence is pretty clear that Neuraxial techniques are often better. 4. Your pain plan has to attack from multiple angles and spare the muscles. And finally, 5. Always be on the lookout for things like BCIS in your high-risk patients. And that leaves me with one final question for you to chew on. As the surgery gets less invasive and our recovery protocols get even slicker, are we moving toward a future where, for most joint replacements, general anesthesia is pretty much off the table? Will the default just become a good regional block with a bit of sedation? It's definitely something to think about. And just so you know, the material for this deep dive came from a couple of fantastic 2024 review articles: Anesthesia for Joint Replacement Surgery by Chan and Co., and Perioperative Care of Patients Undergoing Total Hip Arthroplasty by Haslam, Halvey, and Scott. Definitely check them out if you want to read more.